Episode 5 of House of the Dragon is out, bringing us to the halfway point of the show thus far within its first season. I think that the show has done a lot of really good things, and now that we are halfway through, I want to take a look at the story so far to this point, the characters, talk about what's working, and talk about the one missing piece that I think this show hasn't quite given me to this point. My name is Cody, and I'm looking forward to talking to you more about House of the Dragon. Episode 5 definitely gave us the most drama a single episode of House of the Dragon has to this point, and it kind of ended one story and catapulted us into the beginning of a new era within this show as we continue to journey through life with the Targaryens. All of the ups and downs and crazies that are going to come with it, I believe, are only just beginning as we get halfway through the first season. And I think one of the things that this show has done in a very impressive way is how it has managed its jumps through time. Essentially, the first 5 episodes span about 4 years, maybe 5 to this point, and a whole lot has happened. But instead of being like Game of Thrones that kind of focuses on the day-by-day experiences of our characters, it kind of looks at the key moments in our characters' lives at any given point within a year, having this almost anthological feel as you go through the plot, spanning a lot of time while feeling like you get a good amount of depth within the story that is told. And I think one of the ways this is done is that the show really utilizes screen efficiency, really taking every moment that you have with a particular character on screen and making it feel like you are really getting into the experience of that character. As the show reveals more about the character, it's simultaneously progressing the plot. The prime example of this being Daemon. He's really not in the show all that much, but when he is in the show, he really takes command of the moment, and you find out a lot about him through his actions, his words, his choices in the way in which he behaves around the people whom he is with, and it really displays a world that feels lived in, historical, and believable. Even though Westeros is a completely brutal place that oftentimes goes to the darkest places of our imaginations, it is very fascinating to get entrenched within this world that is so broken yet so entertaining. And House of the Dragon really leans into the elements that I think were some of the strongest components about Game of Thrones, that being the political intrigue side of things. How we have seen Otto Hightower from the very beginning scheming for his daughter to marry Viserys and eventually get the throne, and with the dismissal of Otto Hightower from being the Hand of the King, we see Alicent now putting herself in a position to where she is going to go full steam ahead and make sure that one of her sons gets on that Iron Throne. You can definitely feel that tension built up, and we're looking forward to how all of that is going to play out. We have a clear sense of who is against who by the time we get to the end of Episode 5, and I believe that makes it all the more interesting as we go into the second half of the season. One of the things I was curious about going into this show is, were they going to be able to capture that same gripping tension that Game of Thrones has? And I will say that they actually have done so in a pretty effective way, while also doing it more rapidly. It seems to have picked up the pace where the first season of Game of Thrones was a little bit slower. This show seems to have taken advantage of, hey, there's a lot of things that worked in here. We're going to give you guys a crazy wedding scenario. We're going to give you the political intrigue, the backstabbing, the alliances, the betrayals. All of that is coming, and we're going to experience that pretty quickly early on. However, I feel like some of this going at a faster pace doesn't feel as impactful as the moments did in Game of Thrones. However, that doesn't mean that it is bad, it's just going at a quicker clip. And in the midst of this, the one thing that I walk away with halfway through the show to this point is I think there is still a missing piece within this show, and I think part of it has to do with the fact that there is much more gray going on in this show than even in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was a show that was full of gray characters who were morally complex, who were susceptible to doing things that we as the audience like and we as the audience just despise. However, we always had the Starks to look on as a family that was noble, respectable, and kind of thrown into all of this chaos that they didn't really invite into their own lives, but were just kind of caught up into it because of the past that Ned Stark had with Robert Baratheon. So it gave us the opportunity to always look at the Starks as a family whose journey we could kind of get get behind and root for. We always kind of wanted the good outcomes to happen for the Starks, even though they were not always necessarily guaranteed, and the characters from the Stark family didn't always do the things that we wanted them to do or that we thought was best for them to do. There was definitely moments of failures for the Starks, but I think that House of the Dragon hasn't really set that scenario up. From my perspective, House of the Dragon doesn't really have a clear-cut person who we can definitely root for at this point. Rhaenyra is a character who definitely gets our empathy, but she has done some really questionable things, especially in the last 2 episodes. I think the one who we can kind of empathize with the most at this point is probably Alicent Hightower, because she's kind of been thrown into this whole mess by her father, and she's just been caught up in the whole thing. Viserys is definitely someone who we have times where we respect him, but other times where he just displays how weak of a king that he is, and ultimately he is failing. And then there is obviously Daemon, who is by no means a hero. There's guys like Kristen Cole, who after this episode we kind of root for, but then we saw what happened at the wedding, and it's like, okay, well, what was that all about? And we have a lot of gray. It's an entertaining show to watch, and it makes me want to see what's going to happen, but at this point, I'm just not sure I have a clear person that I'm rooting for to succeed on their particular journey. But that's not necessarily bad. And I think that after we get through the halfway point, we have a much clearer understanding of kind of where we would like certain people's journeys to go. For me, I feel bad for how Alicent's been tossed into this whole thing, and Kristen Cole getting his heart broken by Rhaenyra. You're like, man, I kind of want to pull for this guy now. But we'll see how the show pans out going forward. It definitely leans into the extremely moral gray side of Westeros, but that is why a lot of us watch it, and we want to see if these stories continue to give us those jaw-dropping moments and good payoff like Game of Thrones did for a very long time until about the very end. However, what do you guys think of the show to this point? Is it great? Is it good? Is it bad? Let me know in the comments below. At this moment, I am reviewing House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, so if you want more of that type of stuff, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and I look forward to talking to you next time on Parallel Quest. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.